Hey, everybody. So delighted to be here with my friend, Tina Cartwright of Rebranding Motherhood. Hello, Tina.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me here. I'm like a new person. It's nap time. I got a lip on. Things are happening.
I love it. I don't know. I have to say, kind of zhuzh yourself up faster than anybody I've ever seen. About 3 minutes ago, Tina was in a hat and like no makeup. And I was like, okay, well, we're going to go live in about 10 minutes. She's like, I'll be right back. And boom, this is one of the skills that you have as a rebrander of motherhood, the reality that moms have very little time and have to kind of like figure it out as they go.
Quick.
You're really good at that.
Thank you. I'm seriously like, I don't remember where I got this from, maybe like a makeup artist or someone, but I have like 5 things that I do. Like just keep it very simple, 5 parts that get applied, and then you go. And then at some point you just have to like walk away and you don't know what it looks like or if it's good or bad. You just have to walk away.
Absolutely. Yep. You have to just take everything at a pace. I think I've noticed that too. My perfectionism has relaxed a lot in the past few years just by virtue of necessity. Speaking of perfect, so you and I met in Tulum, where we were both at a doTERRA conference. We were both kind of uninitiated into the world of that world, but we had a common friend, Tatiana, who had introduced us, and we roomed together. And I have to say, whenever anybody tells me I'm in a room with someone, I'm a little bit like, really?
Right?
Okay,
I know.
that'll be fun.
I was fearful. Well, just because like as an adult, when's the last time you had like an unknown blind roommate? Right? You're like, what is this even going to be?
Oh, yeah. And I think that there's a kind of, well, I don't know. I think there's just for introverts a kind of anxiety about being, thrown together with people in any way, shape, or form. There's like a certain amount of privacy you want. There's a certain amount of ability to sneak off and be by yourself. But the truth is, I was happy for every single minute we spent together, and we spent a lot of time together.
We got to
enough so that I fell in love with you. I fell in love with your project. I fell in love with your brand, Rebranding Motherhood. The pink, by the way, is in honor of Christina because the pink, as you can see from her fabulous lip.
And this is my water bottle. This is my cell phone cover. This is a lifestyle, people. This is not like a brand choice.
I love it. Well, it's working for you. And so is this whole project that you're working on. And I want to talk a little bit about why I found this so compelling. I want to share a little bit about what we were talking about in Tulum, which was an interesting moment for you. You had just released a video that was going viral. And a little bit, it reminded me about how Brene Brown described her TED Talk, that she initially like released this thing into the world and was super vulnerable. It's a TED Talk about vulnerability originally. And then she had kind of a, I don't know, like a postpartum angst about it and just went down hard. Was scared because it was so raw. And so I want to talk about that viral video and the decisions that you made around that and where you see this project, which we're going to talk about, going from here. So let's just start with what Rebranding Motherhood is. And then we'll talk a little bit about its intersections with Healthy Deviance. When I shared this out, I'm sharing this with my audience live right now, but the idea that I had was sort of about healthy deviant parenting and how we're going to talk specifically about motherhood because that's your jam. But I've heard so many people in my world talk about the trials and tribulations of trying to raise kids and be parents in a society like our unhealthy default reality that just makes it so difficult to create a healthy environment and to maintain your own health and sanity in the context of all of that. So let's talk about your project a little bit. Tell me what it is, and then we'll go back a little bit to the moment of the video.
Yeah, it's so wild. I still feel like it's surreal in a lot of ways because I've been building brands for almost 15 years. So I worked at one of the biggest CPG companies in the globe, building mom-focused brands for all these women around the world. And so I became so deeply connected with this consumer, but from a very different vantage point. And that was all good and well, like it is for most of us living in this world when something doesn't affect you. And then I got pregnant, and then it was like, oh, wait a minute, let me actually slow down and engage, which is like motherhood will have to do. And I felt very sucker punch by what motherhood actually was versus what the sanitized imagery that society had served me up on a plate of what motherhood was supposed to look like. And so it was really like this wild moment where I had to come to grips as I was struggling with postpartum depression and struggling to grab hold of this new reality that is life as a mother. Everything changes for you all at once: your relationship to yourself, your relationship with your partner, your world, your finances, everything, and all in 1 second. And it was so disconnected with reality. It just felt like it was a horrific truth that had to be debunked. I don't know how else to better say it. And that was the catalyst for Rebranding Motherhood. It was truly my own experience and trying to find a way to almost illustrate how, literally real time, because I'm a work in progress. Let's not, like, I am not #healed. I am not #enlightened. I am trying to wake up more each and every day and be more present. But I feel like I've found some momentum in the way that I've been experiencing this. And I found some incredible resources and people and curriculum and information and just things that have, as you said, brought me closer to my inner self, my light. My therapist, my old therapist, who's now my friend, always talks about, we have these candles that are all of our spirits that we all have. And really our job all day long and all life long is protecting this light, protecting its ability to shine as bright as possible, and all of the variables that can impact that: people, places, things. And so what I was realizing through my own experience through motherhood of just survival and finding a way to wrap my arms around it, I was becoming so much more deeper connected with myself. I was building, for the very first time ever, an understanding of unconditional love, but it was for myself. And I never knew what that was. And why that's so important, I'll just kind of close on this one. Why that's so important is because I don't think it's possible for any of us to show up like the parents or the mothers that we want to in authenticity unless we really are living that relationship with ourselves.
Yeah.
And it really has to come from that, because kids will really break down the bullshit like real fast, like real fucking fast. They'll just be like, you're not doing that. You're telling me, but I see you doing da 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 da. So unless it's like, like exactly what they're seeing you do, it's really not going to work. And so that was how this thing all kind of started manifesting and concocting. And that was a journey that kind of began formally like fall of last year. And we've now grown to about 70,000 community members and growing, of mom, parents, and caregivers that just feel as well that motherhood needs a complete rebranding. Because, it does.
It does. And you just gave me the perfect kind of entree into this connection with Healthy Deviance. When you were talking about, the light within each of us, a lot of health and fitness books and advice are about like how to, get your ideal weight or your certain body composition or the look of health and fitness. And even athletically, to be able to perform at a certain way or accomplish a certain goal. But I really think that Healthy Deviance is more about illuminating the best within you. And there's a little passage in my book called Healthy Deviance Wanted, where I talk about, like, it's almost like a want ad, like they're wanted, Healthy Deviance wanted for daring adventure, must be willing to like an experiment and do all this stuff. But there's like all these benefits, just like there is with a job, it comes with like fringe benefits and a perk package. But it really comes down to learning the art of how to get rid of the crap our society has put upon us that has blunted us and dimmed our lights, and instead discover the very best within us and share those gifts with the world in a way that feels regenerative to us, not exhausting, not depleting, not overwhelming, not burning us out, and that also feels good to receive from the people on the other side. Because I will say, it's interesting. Tiny little sidebar here. I just listened to a podcast with Tim Ferriss and I can't remember the guy, Dexter, the armchair, something or other.
Oh, Dax Shepard. I love that. That one just released. Yes. One of my
yes. Well, tune in at 22 minutes, Tina. Okay. You are going to hear them talk about almost verbatim. I don't know that either one of them has even seen my book, but what they say is so very much Healthy Deviance 101. And it's sort of about how all of the biohacking and the optimization and all of it, like it does help, it can help, but it's really not at the core of what it takes to become a healthy, happy person. Yes, it's about like these things can help deal with the symptoms of living in the unhealthy default reality. They can make it easier to survive in the short term. And as they point out, they can also add to the trouble. They can become like more healthy things that you have to do. And it gets more and more complicated as you're optimizing and optimizing. And I really feel like that's part of the message I heard from you too. It's like, all the presentations of all the things that you should be doing, have to be doing as a mom, as a woman of color, as a person who like left a job for you. You were, at a very, I'll let you tell that story if you want to and name the company, but you were at like a very big packaged goods company doing marketing at a very high level. And
a lot of money, which people don't get it twisted. Living your best truth and becoming an entrepreneur, it's a tough road, and the coins don't come right away. So yeah, I totally walked away from what I like to call the golden handcuffs of comfort that are probably the unhealthy reality that you always describe, that you're
for sure. And you were like selling the stuff that these mega companies want to sell moms, that they have to have all these products. They have to buy into all of these things. They have to spend their hard-earned money trying to achieve the look, the feel, the ideal, the brand that has been motherhood in the unhealthy default reality, which is unattainable. Correct. But you keep doing more and more and more. And that's kind of what I heard those guys talking about in the context, of course, of evolutionary biology, which you and I talked a lot about in Tulum, that we're the first generation in the history of humanity to be trying to live in this unhealthy default reality. And we're having to learn the skills as we go. But it takes your kind of bravery, I think, and willingness to step away from that machine to tell the truth as you're experiencing it. And that's, I think, where you and I really met at this moment of you truth telling and then being like, oh my gosh, did I like, because you got feedback. What? Don't talk about it.
Put it back in the box.
Tell me about the video. When you described it to me in Tulum, I was like, okay, now I got to see it. And is it still up on your channel, I presume?
Still up on my channel. If you guys, if you all, I also work in, I'm not saying you guys, you all. As you all go on my page, you'll see it tagged up top. But I think the last time I checked it, we were quickly approaching 1 million views. And when I first put it up, it's really interesting building brands on a global scale, billion-dollar brands, and then doing it for yourself. You think in concept, it's so easy to translate yourself and what you bring to the table, but it's a very challenging and complex experience. And so I was really early on in my journey, but I knew the number one pillar or cornerstone of rebranding motherhood had to be a very strong thread of unfilteredness, rawness, realness, really showing exactly what the hell motherhood is. Because I have a very strong core belief that the only way we're going to get true systematic improvements and changes for the health and well-being of mothers in this world, in our galaxy, is for people to truly understand what it feels like. I don't think people would be so confused on why we need to have paid maternity leave after someone's been in the hospital and watched a woman's vagina tear open and then watched the hospital in a diaper. Like, no one would be confused by that. Like, no one would be confused if they saw that there's now you used to live a 12-hour cycle as a human. Now you live a 24-hour cycle raising this little infant. Was up all night. And just because we had the babies doesn't mean we're actually trained women on what the hell we're supposed to do, how to care for them, how to give them a temperature, which goes in their bum bum. Like, look at me. I'm using words bum bum. Like,
I know your brain just gets totally taken over, right?
Like, it's just like a completely different, it's truly an alternate reality that exists in current plain sight that people are just not aware of. And so anyways, that was just like the challenge and the existential, conundrum I was trying to solve and bring to people with the brand. And so with this message, I was right in the middle of a shitstorm within life. My husband was just brought into the hospital. Literally, his body was fully shutting down. He had an internal infection. We ended up, he's totally fine. Spoiler alert, he's totally fine. But as anybody who's gone through major health issues, when you're in the thick of it and someone's admitted into the hospital and they have to go to emergency surgery, shit gets real fast. Yeah. Then cycle like 30, I don't even know, 12 hours later after he was admitted to the hospital, I was supposed to leave on my first trip away from my children in 4.5 years since I had my oldest daughter, Kayla. Then I get to the airport to finally make it to said trip after all of this craziness has gone down. And there was a whole emergency that happened with my child at her school where there was a claim that my child had an insane fever, like 106, 107. She didn't. It was a situation that's also crazy. These are like 12 tangential stories for another day. Okay. But it was a crazy turn of events. And I was in this moment where I was breaking the fuck down. I was breaking down. It was too much to bear. It was like my motherhood hat was calling on me to go race to go get to my child. I'm having to completely forsake myself. I finally made the declaration that I was going to invest in myself, take time away from my family to truly self-care on a deep level. And I couldn't do that now. I'm literally driving away from the airport. After I was on the plane, y'all, I was on the plane and I was just had my phone in my, and people are like, why are you filming while you're driving? Y'all, I had it in a phone holder clip. Let's not get crazy. It's 2023. Okay. It was here where I had my GPS and I was like breaking down. I was like, this is what people need to feel. I don't know how many women and moms I know that go and hide and cry in places. Their car is a number one place. Their closet, the bathroom. People stop hitting on moms in the bathroom. They're probably just trying to regroup. Right? Like, and so this is a common trauma response that women and mothers are going through on a regular day basis. And I was going through it real time. And I had to share it. I just really felt compelled to share it out with the world because that's really what I want to be able to share to people. Because on the flip side of the difficulties of motherhood are this beautiful, brilliant, like, I would really call it like an enlightenment state. I've been able to access this realm of enlightenment and see glimpses of where it can take me because of the journey that motherhood has brought. And I think that's common for a lot of spaces of trauma, right? Once you heal, as you're healing, it can really bring some, seismic change into your world and sphere. So that was really where I was starting from. It was already like an insane moment. And then I put it out there and I was already, I would say, my nervous system was completely offline. I was completely rattled. I was completely like unhinged. I don't know what to call it. Like I was just not feeling grounded. My feet were not on the ground. And that happens for women and mothers multiple times a day, every day, constantly because of the pressures that are put on them and the amount of responsibilities that are on them, just not within motherhood, but also to be themselves. And so I just really struggled. I had people calling me like, are you okay? What's wrong? What's the matter? Christina, are you sure we should have that up there? Like, maybe we need to take that down. Like, I think you might be too emotional. You might be telling too many truths to the world. Like, it's unsettling. Like, you can't compute. Please stop.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait a minute. I think we have to show people a tiny little bit of this. Is that okay with you?
Of course. I'm
okay.
Totally comfortable.
This is a video that goes on for a few minutes. So we're just going to show a few seconds of it right now. And then if you want to go see the rest of it, just go to Tina's page on Instagram at rebranding.motherhood. But I will show you what Tina showed me in our hotel room in Tulum. And then I will share with you her question of me. Stick with this. This is really interesting. And this is another moment, I think, where Healthy Deviance comes in. You do things, you say things, you share things, you live things that other people don't. They may be living them, but they're not sharing them. They're not talking about it. And this sort of sanitized version of reality gets projected, particularly on social media. And then it's like, you never see the stuff that's like a little, like things maybe are not okay. So here's Christina at her moment, right? As she has left the airport, left behind her planned vacation, the first one in 4 years, to go rescue a child who she's been told has 106-degree temperature, who eventually we find out has not. Here we go. Okay, wait, I know the sound, but you can.
Just click that little circle down there in like my armpit. You see it down there?
Yeah, here we go.
Every day, and it's so hard every single day to do it. And we come last. Me, the moms, we come last so much. So this is just like a real time moment where a lot of shit just broke down that I had planned and thought I was gonna do, and being a mom has to come first, so I'm doing it, and I'm gonna do it, but I just wanted to just fucking say how hard it is, because it's so hard.
Yeah. You get the gist of this, right? Like, you showed me this, and you shared with me that your husband had called you to tell you that your mother-in-law was worried about you, that a bunch of people in your world had sort of questioned, are you sure you want this out there? Because in the context of your rest of your Instagram feed, you're telling the truth and your life looks pretty together. Like, you're talking about real life stuff, but it's mostly pretty upbeat, and like you're coping, you're not off the rails in your most of the time. But this was the first time that you really publicized a very difficult moment. And your question to me was like, should I take this down?
I did. Also, after 12 hours of meeting you.
Yes.
Well, that is mine. Should I take this off of Instagram? What do you think, Pilar?
We had established trust rather quickly, to be fair. But I think it helped that I was a stranger. And it also probably helped that, like you, I'm an entrepreneur who has a brand, and I go through that same stuff. Like, I don't know, is this too much? But I told you, when I looked at the rest of your Instagram feed and I listened to what you were telling me about the feedback you'd already been getting, because this thing was starting to lift, and the comments that you were getting from your people were like, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for telling the truth. Like, this is what it's like for me too.
Yes. And I didn't share that. The feedback, I was actually shocked. And so one of the things I have done is I kind of, as anyone does, you manage your community to keep it positive. Like, we don't need any crazy commentary or reactive commentary going on there about mothers and mothers' choices. It's inclusive. But I would say 99% of the comments of the 4,000 comments that I've gotten internationally were positive. Like, it had created a movement. Women were like, I stand with you. You see me. This is the realest post I've ever seen on Instagram. I just cried. I'm crying right now in the car. Like, oh my God, that just happened to me 5 seconds ago. Thank you. Thank you. Like, I don't feel so alone. And then, of course, there's a ton of single mothers who are just like, oh, finally, somebody gets it. I mean, because motherhood is a spectrum of difficulty. And I think, there's a lot of challenges that happen in general. But of course, like, being a single mother is a challenge, unbeknownst to any of us, how difficult that really is. So it was grounding and humbling to see the change that it had really brought for so many women at all phases. Women that have children that are 30 years old, 10 years old, children with special needs, twins, women who have lost children. I mean, it runs the gamut, and they all felt seen. And that's what I'm trying to build with Rebranding Motherhood, is to be the mirror so that we can all be seen, so that we can have proper support.
That's beautiful. I'm thinking back to when I was a little girl, and my mom and dad were pretty much separated at that point. My mom was trying to handle a lot on her own. She'd started the farm, which is now, it's an intentional community, but it was like carving a living out of the land at a time that was really difficult with not a lot of help. And there was a day where we were just being difficult, I think mostly because we were just bored and thought it'd be fun to like be difficult. And I remember this moment where I saw my mom for the first time get to the point of tears. And she sat down at the kitchen table and she lit a cigarette. This is back in 1970 something. And she's just like, I need to just sit here right now or something. And she's like, I need you guys to help me more. And we were all like, oh,
Mom's a human. Oh my God. Like,
mom's a human. And we just made mom cry. Like, it was pretty confronting. And it just really made me realize that because I always saw my mother being competent, empathetic, handling stuff, spinning all the plates, managing all of the different crises of the moment. It hadn't really occurred to me that my mother could have a breakdown, or my mother, even in a moment, could break down and just like be in need of help, be in need of support. And the thing that struck me watching that video, when you say like moms, they come last and I'm going to do this, I'm going to keep doing it. And it's just so hard. Yeah, I know.
The story about your mom is so touching because I can just empathize. And I think too, Pilar, the world can empathize. Like truly, like if they really knew, because too, we have to remember the generation before us, women had no platform or space or community to even say if they want, like their bodies weren't even theirs, whether they wanted children in the first place, let alone resources, let alone support. And so all of these women were bottling in a lot of stuff. I think that's why I have a lot of friends who have, mothers who have addiction, whether it's alcoholism or other things that were being used to numb. And so it's like that generational, like it's in us, like, even if you don't, like, it's just an emotional thing. And, I felt like I was just at the counter with your mom, like smoking.
I know. Totally. I know. And I mean, gosh, if she got through it on Marlboros, like, honestly, that probably was the best available choice. But remembering back to the era that you're talking about, like, a lot of her compatriots at that time were still, it was Valium and or prescription painkillers. I don't know if you saw I think it was called The First Lady or something like that, but it was about the president's wives. And I think it was like, I can't remember even who it was, but like Michelle Obama, Eleanor Roosevelt, and Betty Ford. And they kind of followed the stories of these three first wives through different eras, but all with their share of, the patriarchy and the misogyny and the wounding that happened to them in various shapes and forms. But Betty Ford sort of famously had a shoulder injury that then, she got medicated with prescription medications that ultimately became an addiction for her. And I think that there's so much pain in our everyday lives that all of us, not just parents, but anybody, is kind of gets compelled to look for ways to self-anesthetize, to get through what I call enduring the unendurable, or seeking oblivion, which is even beyond anesthesia. This is when you just kind of go for like, I don't want to feel anything. I don't want to be aware of anything. I'll distract myself. A lot of what social media, honestly, and Netflix binging can be, but also drugs and alcohol and food, sugar, the whole shebang. So part of it, like I kept hearing in what you were telling me, was like you had built a bridge to the true story of this moment. Yes. And it was like you were offering other people a bridge to kind of come back from that. And like, you can be there. Exactly. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world.
Exactly. And that's, you hit the key. And this is something I'll never forget. I have a therapist that's now to my friend. Sadly, when you move states, as everybody knows, you have to like change providers, which is like a horrible reality of all of our lives in the healthcare system. But one of the things that she taught me very early is that having emotions means you're human. Yes. And there aren't good ones and there aren't bad ones. Like, we literally need to eradicate that terminology from our lexicons. Okay. Emotions are defined, it's like a color. Is red bad? No, it's red. Is pink, yellow, green? They're colors. Happy, sad, upset, distracted, focused. They're just emotions. And so that's one of the things that I really, that's a core parenting principle. And so like within our household with our two girls, and it was so critical for myself to be going through emotions. Like, I'm constantly facing my emotions publicly in front of my daughter. Like, she knows the line happy tears. I cry because I'm happy, and mommy can cry because she's sad, and she can laugh because something's funny, or she can be distracted right now and she needs to focus. Like, there's all these different emotions that just make you human. Like, literally, when you have an emotion, my therapist should be like, you're human. You're human.
You're still here.
Like, celebrate that. Like, you are alive, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's the other piece that you said that I really felt confident in our conversation of putting that up there, because my life, you know, on the gram, first of all, my life on the gram is not my full life. It's no one's full life, everybody.
Right.
Okay. So let's not get that confused. But the life that I've shared on the gram, like, there's a lot of really beautiful moments, right? But there's also dark moments in each day. Yeah. And so I think it's so important, especially for mothers that are carrying so much weight daily, emotional weight, the emotional weight of trying to care and raise another child. That's one whole box. Then yourself, you have to release. You have to. It's a requirement. And if you don't, then all of these other health issues, which women are already more susceptible to after having children, like, there's just this like kind of like reverse hamster wheel that's like working against us, that when you start releasing your emotions, you're just releasing things and you're freeing up and you're opening up to live your most authentic, happiest, truest life. And I describe that as like, what's that point? It's when you look outside and the colors are brighter. The grass is greener, the sky is bluer. And I think that's just how I would describe it. I don't think there's any like perfectness that exists in the world, but it's when you can just see it and it's illuminating and you're open enough to receive it.
Yep. I had a teacher once talk about how, you know, like your emotions are on one dial. And if you turn it, you know, if you're on two and you're going to feel less pain, but you're also going to feel less joy. If you turn it to 9 or 10 or 11, there's spinal tap, almost at 11, you know, that, everything comes more to life, and you can get kind of blown back. But each of us also has a comfort zone with that. And I do think that like one thing that really occurs to me too is like, it's okay. Like, if how you've gotten through the past 10 or 20 years or your whole life has been by having your dial turned down, like that got you here. That's great. And I think the more you feel like you're being told that you're wrong, you're not right, you're not good enough, you should be a different way, it is inherently such a painful place to be receiving that message and never feeling like you can win at life. You're gonna keep that dial down. And I've seen this in my Healthy Deviant U group, which is a membership program I run that has basically got like a year-long curriculum packed inside of it, but people stay in it for longer, 2-3 years. Since I started it in 2020, I've got members who have stuck with it. And what they start talking about is no longer the weight that they have. Like, many people do lose weight. They do check their blood pressure, their cholesterol, these things that they thought were their goals change. Yay. And that's wonderful. And more importantly, they start feeling what they say. And this is when I celebrate. It's like, I feel like for the first time, I'm actually more myself. I know who I am and I like who I am. And I'm more willing to feel more, to go forth more, to present the version of myself that I like and I'm comfortable with now. And guess what? My life is changing. Like, my relationships are changing. People are seeing me differently, and I'm embracing new opportunities because I now feel like I have that courage. And when I think about that moment in Tulum, and now and I've been following you and seeing you, and we've been talking more.
We're real life friends now.
We are friends now.
We're real life friends now.
There's no going back. But I see that too, like in the comments and the reactions that you're getting to this work. It's like, this is not how to be a better mom in the same way that the original branding of motherhood. Like, can you just be more patient and more long suffering and more, whatever resilient means, I don't even know anymore. That word I feel like has been co-opted to mean that you can just endure the unendurable longer. That is not the goal in my mind. And I think where I see our Healthy Deviant and Rebranding Motherhood worlds intersecting is also this call for, like, can we just question the whole baseline against which we are measuring ourselves? Can we start? Yeah.
100%. You said something to me that I will hold in my heart and my head forever, for the rest of my life. And it was a framework that was just so, it just was like such a shift for me. And you said that when you really shift gears and you start becoming a healthy deviant, you start giving from a place of surplus versus trying to give from a place of deficit.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, like kind of the different buckets that live in the world for people, right? There's people who are just like, they don't know what the hell's going on. They don't know what's up. They don't know what's down. They don't know if they're numb, if they're what. They're just like living like and swirling around. Then there's a huge group of people, I used to consider myself this, that I felt like I'd been doing things. I was in therapy. I'm in talk therapy. Like I'm getting a smoothie like every day. I'm eating healthy. I'm a flexitarian, which meant I'm pretty much vegan, no dairy, but I also eat fish, but like whatever, I'm healthy. I was drinking a bunch of water. I was reading important literature that's going to nourish my brain, but there was still something not right. You know what I'm saying, Pilar? Like I'm still coming up to these points where I feel like I'm operating in deficit mode. Yeah. I didn't have that language before you, but I was operating in this place of like, I'm still giving from this negative pot, like a bucket of nothingness. Yeah. And it was just feeling like I was never really like doing anything. I'm not like leaping and bounding and developing like a child, like having real developmental progress. And so for me, I really loved, I feel like I almost got like the crash course in Healthy Deviant.
I think you did.
For like 3 days. And it was life changing. I mean, we didn't even talk about going in the cenote and like the fear immersion therapy. That I guess that'll be our next conversation together.
Yeah.
I'll forget that. That was crazy. But that was really the piece that was the shift for me in understanding how important your work is. And exactly what I'm also trying to build for moms is just the tools for her to be able to really shine will allow her to shine in all the other areas of her life. Because motherhood, I don't ever want to have a brand where people think like motherhood defines me.
Yeah.
That is singularly who I am. Motherhood is one of the best experiences and chapters I've ever been through in my whole entire life. It has completely changed me. It has saved my life. It has, maybe in some days I might question, has it ruined? No, I'm just kidding. It has completely empowered me, but it is one piece of who Tina Cartwright is. And that's what I want moms to embrace. I want moms to embrace their selves, who they are at their core, just like you are with Healthy Deviant, of who are you, so that you can have the energy to go do what you need to do every day as a mom and just, kind of live. Because there's this whole myth too, of the village, this freaking village. There's like for women and moms, like, it takes a village. And it's so infuriating because there is no village. It doesn't exist. You know who's your village? Your fucking self. Me. I have to be my own village for real. And that's what Rebranding Motherhood is. It's how do you concoct, like self-create and develop your own village, because there is not this magical one that exists for you on the side. Yeah. You're going to have to build it yourself, and you're going to have to be able to support yourself and heal yourself.
Yep. Well, this is really intriguing to me because I think those wake-up calls that we have, like we've given too much from a point of deficit, that is life in the unhealthy default reality, that depletion cycle that I talk about in my book and in Healthy Deviant You. I call it the vicious cycle of the unhealthy default reality, where you go along with automatic choices and the presentations of like how you should be and what you should have and what you should be able to do and earn and buy. And if you do that, if you follow those automatic prescribed ways of being, you eventually get broken down and depleted. You end up with initially all kinds of health problems and physical, mental, emotional, social, spiritual problems that then the unhealthy default reality presents solutions, right? It's like, hey, you've got dark circles now, so you need this under eye cream, or you have gained weight, so you need this subscription box, whatever it is, you need to be on this diet, you should be vegan, you should be this. And then we go and we embrace these solutions as prescribed. And then we end up with a feeling of trying and failing, getting our money and our time and our energy getting depleted. And we start to feel worse about ourselves because clearly we're doing what we're supposed to be doing and it's not working. It must be us.
Exactly.
And yeah. Yes. And that's the thing. Like then you're off to the races. And as I say, once you get to that depletion point, it's called ego depletion. And it's something that they study in psychology all the time. I'll see if I can actually find this while we're chatting through it, because to me, that cycle that leads to shame, to blame,
Yes.
to, you know, a sense of just, you're not making the grade, what's wrong with you.
And our society too. I love that you put it that way, because our society lives on the side of everything's someone's highlight reel. Like everything we see, American Idol, the Kardashians, like reality TV, YouTube stars, like all this stuff is not showing the spectrum, the gamut. And that is really what I wanted to bring with my brand, because there are so many different layers. And when you only see people appearing to just be doing it better than you are, all you do is just feel shame. You feel like just crap. Like, why can't I? And then you're doing so many things.
Oh,
you're like, I'm doing all these things. What is wrong with me that I can't, like, I'm not getting the results?
Yep. That's it. And so it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes.
It's a self-creating, here, I'll share this with you. So this is just an illustration from my book and part of a handout that I use in my Healthy Deviant U program. But you start at 12 o'clock. Automatic default choices lead you to automatic, basically unhealthy default problems. And then these prescribed solutions, you embrace those. You go through a try-fail cycle of improvement attempts. They don't work, or they don't work as advertised, or they're too expensive in many cases to sustain without bottoming out your own budget or your time and energy and money from other things that you have committed to, which leads to that sense of just like, I keep trying so hard, but you're now blaming yourself and feeling inadequate and being ashamed because everybody on Instagram looks great, you know, and the ads that Procter & Gamble are putting out about what motherhood looks like are so sanitized and wonderful, and everyone's happy and it's going great for them. And then you get into this chronic ego depletion place, that sense of diminished capacity of not being able to keep up, you know, that sense of like, what happens here is really interesting, Tina. And we talked a little bit about this too, that if you ever thought you had any willpower, it's gone. And you're like, why do I seem to be eating more junk food? Why do I want to veg out in front of Netflix instead of take a walk? Why is it that I can't seem to resist having a third glass of wine? All of the sense of willpower that you're told you should have is just like gone. That's ego depletion. I can't do the things that I set out to do, even when I know they're in my own best interest. So that leaves you then to this next section of increased vulnerability. It's got cut off somehow. Increased vulnerability and reactivity, which is when you, like the place that you got to in the car. Like,
yes.
I don't know, I can't do it. That overwhelm, desperation, victim mindset. Typically, now this is something that you did very Healthy Deviant that a lot of people don't, is they just go right back into the automatic default choice. More vulnerable, more reactive, more inclined to take whatever's easy and automatic and just go with that. Because who can figure out anything else? Just like it's presented, it's accessible. Yes. So maybe, yeah, you get an antidepressant. You get an anti-anxiety med. And not to, you know, I'm not judging anybody who needs and wants those things and finds them helpful, but it's like, this is how we slide back into the next round of unhealthy default prescriptions. There's something wrong with you, here's something that will fix it. And that leads to this downward cycle that eventually goes to learned helplessness. No matter what I do is not good enough. And I don't know if you just saw this in the news, but the blogger, Deuce, who was one of the premier bloggers, the earliest bloggers, who was kind of relegated to the category of mommy blogger.
Oh, I read that article. I saw that. Committed suicide. Yeah, I saw that.
Yep, she committed suicide. And I mean, I didn't follow her closely because it wasn't in my area of interest, but I mean, I remember her being at the top of that game, and a big part of what she was doing was sort of talking about the stuff you're talking about now in a blog format of like the impossibility of it, but also the kind of crushing pressure and the feeling of like hopelessness that came from that. That spiral can be deadly.
Yes.
And so I think as Healthy Deviance and Rebranding Motherhood start to kind of rise, and
because it amps up. It amps up, right? Like over time. Like I want people to know I got off the ride, but I just turned 37 years old last week. I've been on that same damn ride and cycle for a lot of years before I was able get off. And I think too, for a lot of years, I'd say like the last few years, I've been like getting off, and it's been reducing. Like the impact has been reducing to the point where I finally got enough resources, like things like you're teaching, things that you're providing, where I understood and had the tools to make the hard left change. Because you're right. There's so many variables. Like for that woman we were just talking about, like even once you make it, like in our society, it's really, really difficult to like keep up, like just to keep up. Like you have to be up, you have to be out. People are always looking and seeing you, like even not even like living the life of an influencer, just like living in the world. Like, right? Like just came off the pandemic. We are all influencers in the globe. Okay. We all had our own like YouTube channel on Zoom, and all we did was sit in front of a camera, and we all saw the impacts of like the fatigue, the burnout that like comes from that life. And so I think in general, like you said, there's so many benefits of all of us just garnering an understanding of just what's happening. So that I've always struggled with, I think you've kind of called it the unhealthy reality choices. And for me, it's like the voices in my head, right, that will overtake the conversation until the point where I finally was able to hear loudest my own voice. And that was when I saw a shift in the ability to really make different choices day to day, like how I interact with people, how my relationships are with myself and others. And it's a journey though.
Yep. It is. And I think that I believe that there's a point that people reach. Sometimes it takes years or decades where they've tried it the unhealthy default reality way. And for me, I talk about this like the point at which I kind of broke myself. If there's a healthy deviant hero's journey I describe in my book too. Oh, which reminds me, I'll put this up here. If anybody wants a free preview of my book, it's a preview pack actually. It has like the introduction, the first chapter, and a bunch of other thank you. And there is an audiobook sample available there too, I believe. But the healthy deviant hero's journey, as I describe it, or Shiro's journey, if you prefer, or call it what you want, the journey that we go on is one of compliance. You know, we all come into the world reasonably healthy and reasonably happy, you know, absent some serious congenital birth challenges or trauma or whatever. But the vast majority of kids come into this world, even in difficult circumstances, in relatively good shape. And then as we, you know, go through our traumas, or we attend school, or we watch media, we become told that we need to comply and become more like what the society expects us to be. That compliance is what takes us down into what I call, you know, descent, where you just start having problems and feeling worse about yourself. And this is when people start seeking medical help or, you know, psychological help. And that's great. You probably need it by then. And at some point, like now you've tried all this problem solution, try fail cycle has happened enough that you end up in a position I call darkness, which is sort of at the bottom of that U, where you start to feel really hopeless and helpless. And that's a lot of where that desperation kicks in, that anesthesia, the desire for oblivion, the just get me out of here, like you break mental breakdowns. And I think at that point, one of two things happens. People either break and don't get better. They break and die effectively, or end up institutionalized where they no longer have any autonomy and they're not really coming out as themselves at all anymore, or they bounce. And that bounce is like, I'm really interested in meeting people who are starting to go, I don't want to die. I don't want to break down. I don't want to live this way. There's a better way. And then from the bounce, you move to what I call divergence. And diverging from that normal, unhealthy default reality cycle that takes you down requires stepping into a process that's a much more of a virtuous cycle. And to me, what you're doing with rebranding motherhood is stepping into effectively what I call a healthy deviant, a virtuous cycle of healthy deviance, where you become willing to do it differently. You become willing to experiment. You start looking for outliers like you who will guide you instead of just taking you deeper down. Yeah.
You're 100% right. And that's what I want to share with moms. It's like this concept of advocating and becoming an advocate for yourself. And through that process is where you find all the outliers you need. I've found like my entire medical team that's helped me with like my medical issues that I've had, like literally just becoming my own person that's going on and researching and finding who I want. And then there's so many people out there in the world doing amazing work and doing it in a way that resonates most with you. That's the key part. Is there's so many, we all have different learning styles. Neurodiversity, this new term of neurodiversity, is so beautiful. I love that word. We don't use on the spectrum anymore, right? It's diversity. It's like our brains are these beautifully like intrinsic, complicated, unique places. And so I think it's really important too that we honor that we all have different ways of internalizing and bringing in information. But that all starts with you first acknowledging that there are people out there that can help you and that can support you. And even being vulnerable enough to say that, like, and being open enough to go there can be life-changing. And I just feel so fortunate. Like, I just feel so fortunate to like know people like you, Pilar. Like, you really changed my life. I know my husband was so sick of hearing about Pilar. Like, he was probably wondering what happened with us. Like, because I love a sister wife that I love, that I like loved and met and just bonded with. And I just wouldn't stop talking about you because you have so much wealth of information, wisdom, and understanding to support your community and to support new members to come to your community on really how to make these changes, really how to have a different life and to feel different in your life that you've been living maybe for 50 years, 40 years.
That's it.
You know,
that's it. And to me, I think that that's another real problem I'm experiencing. I've been experiencing since I was, started the magazine Experience Life back in 2001, that there's a real tendency to aim these messages at a particular demographic. And, clearly mothers is one of those demographics, but it's like, women 35 to whatever, and what I'm finding with Healthy Deviance, and I think you're going to find too, is the awareness of all of this potential for rebranding any stage of your life, any life situation, is that everybody needs to hear this. Children need to hear this. Older people need to hear this. There's a woman in my Healthy Deviant U group in her 70s, Liz, who says, I so wish I had discovered all of this before, but still, like, even in my 70s, I'm so glad, in her words, I get to finish out my life with this version of myself. And I was just like, I was both elated and heartbroken by that, but it's just mostly elated because frankly, you can change at 75 or whatever and still feel like you've got road ahead that's going to be a much better road to travel. Yay.
I love that. And it's never, it's, to me, it's not even like it's never too late to change. I think it's everybody has to accept the reality that we're constantly changing.
Absolutely.
Forever. So knowing that you're going to be constantly changing, like, that's amazing, because even when you do all this work and you think you heal yourself and you think you get there, life is changing you. Circumstances are changing you. You're constantly evolving. And so it's such a beautiful thing to know that your body and your mind are open. Like, you can get to this openness where you can always go back to talk to my current therapist about this all the time, of like acknowledging and recognizing these tent poles of kind of solace that exist out there and knowing they're always there for you. Like, you can like always go back to them, just kind of like flag it in your head.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, I feel so, I don't know, I'm just really honored to be, diverging with you. And I think, well, for some, you mentioned neurodivergence instead of on the spectrum. It made me remember to say that I have a quiz that if anybody wants to take it to find out if they're a healthy deviant and where they fall on that healthy deviant spectrum, how divergent are you as a healthy deviant? It's at healthydeviant.com/quiz. It's like 20 questions. It takes 2 minutes, but it gives you a sense too of like some of the different areas of divergence that you may or may not be embracing and whether or not you're ready at this point. I think I agree with you, Tina, that like life is going to continue to change regardless. And at any moment that you have the capacity to embrace a different way of being, to give it a try, experiment with it and see. So that's a resource for folks. Tell me a little bit about, in the last few minutes that we have, like where you're hoping to bring people into your world, what you're encouraging them to think about and do, and where they can learn more about your work. We've got your Instagram here at rebranding.motherhood, which is where you're most active. Tell me more. What do people need to know about you?
So I also have a YouTube channel, Rebranding Motherhood. That's where you all are going to see some really cool conversations coming to life. So I have my first unfiltered storytelling conversation where I sat down with this really amazing woman talking about how she delivered her own baby, unassisted, not like, oh, I did a water birth, not to say that doesn't matter. Water birth is an intense situation. Natural birth is an intense situation. But imagine delivering your baby, not in a hospital, not with a doula, but you are your own doula and midwife. And I also am sitting down with a woman, a bereaved mother. We're going to do like a conversation around losing a child. I'm also going to be sitting down. This is coming up. Actually, you guys are getting a peek under the hood. This is going to air next week, where I sit down with my old therapist at her house, which was like a very special moment, very Stutz. Jonah Hill, you're not the only cool one that's friends with your therapist. And we talk about strained relationships with mothers, right? So there's a lot of shame that goes on for women who have estranged relationships with their mothers, strained, broken. But there's a lot of pain and trauma that comes along with that. And how do you really kind of progress forward in those relationships? So really just having deeper conversations around these different topics that get closeted within motherhood, and that way, by talking about them more, like especially showing up for women that have lost children. That was a very difficult interview to do and to prepare for. And it was something I had to heal from. Truly, it was like a very intense thing. But I also, as a mother, want to be able to show up for women at all the phases and things that they're going through. And there's a lot of women that have experienced that or are experiencing that or going through that. And I want us to all be able to humble ourselves. So you come to my YouTube channel. It's going to be a lot of really exciting conversations that are coming. My link to my YouTube channel is on my Instagram page. It's super easy. Just like the only link in my bio is that. So head there. Which is very handy. And then that's what's coming up. There's a lot of different things on the horizon that are coming up in the next few months. But essentially, I'm going to continue to have these very raw and unfiltered conversations with myself for you all to watch and enjoy, and get more connected with your spectrum of feelings. And then I'm going to be having conversations with really inspiring people that I feel like have rebranded motherhood or contributed to what we're trying to do at Rebranding Motherhood in the future. So that's kind of what's up and cooking.
It's exciting. Well, I just want to say I'm personally really excited and honored to be having the friendship I have with you. And it really, the cenote experience, which you mentioned, was such a fun one where we both kind of like met some of our fears and did things that we normally would not do together. And it was so exhilarating. And it really did make me feel like my dial got turned up to 11 with you at the same time. And it just really, reminded me of something that I had forgotten about, which was the pleasure of being in other people's company, but particularly if you're a woman in other women's company, other like-minded, like-hearted people, traveling a path as change agents and experimenters. You're leading a charge that needs leading, and I am really honored to be on the same pathway with you. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Pilar. You're just absolutely a shiny, bright light. I think I described you as like, I don't remember, gold flake, like gold fleck. Like I was like, every time I'm around you, I feel brighter, shinier, and more glittery. Like I'm
Yay! Healthy Deviance unite!
Unite. And you said it. It's the most, of all the things we can go tell everybody to do for self-care, I continue to do it, especially like recently for some reason. Relationships with others is the best thing we can do to fill our tanks back up for all of us. And so finding people that enrich you, like we found, is just such a beautiful thing. I treasure it so deeply because they are so rare. And so hopefully we can keep sharing this with you all so you can be inspired. Like it's never too late to find your people.
Right on. Yes, it is never too late to find your people. Find your people. That's it. And make it a party. That's another thing. I'll just end on this note. I have a Healthy Deviant manifesto with 3 points. And the third point in the manifesto is make it a party. The gist of that is like, we need this to be not a miserable slog. We need this to be more fun. We need this to be more open and welcoming, so everybody can get together and have a big party and not fight about paleo versus vegan and not fight about all of the identities that we have to like bang together. But like, we're on the same page wanting to be healthier, happier people in a world that makes that hard. And we can make it easier on each other. So let's keep doing that.
Yes. And we can do it together.
Yeah, let's do it together.
For all of us. I love
Right
it.
on.
Thank you so much for letting me just, again, be in your presence, be in your sphere, be in your orbit. I always glean things from it and just appreciate you from that very first moment. You are truly authentically living and breathing Healthy Deviant. I mean, when the rubber hit the road, hour 10 of us meeting each other in our hotel room, you showed up, girl, and you showed up wholeheartedly, and you just continue to just, you know, provide me with all of this stuff. And it was never like, you know, in my curriculum, it was truly like who you are. Like, you are truly living these principles every day. And I see you doing it with all the people that you come in contact with. It's truly a beautiful thing. So I think we could go on and on with our love fest, but I did have to leave that for you because I love you. Thank you.
I love you too. Well, let's do more. In the meantime, keep rebranding motherhood, taking the world by storm. Woo!
Yay.
Healthy Deviance unite. Love you, Tina.
Bye. Love you too. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.